Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Geek Corner. We are back with another exciting episode. My name is Matt.
I'm Tessa.
All right, let's get into it. Today's video is about Jurassic Park, one of the best movies ever made. And in fact, it's celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, which is crazy. 30 years that Jurassic Park has been out. I was supposed to go watch it a couple weeks back for the 3D. It wasn't exactly the 30th, but it was a 3D version or 3D showing of it, which I did see for the 20th back in 2013. Unfortunately, my wife got sick and we couldn't go, so we ended up watching the movie at home, which I was like, I saved myself a couple bucks. I could have just done that and watched it at home and put on some 3D glasses to pretend, but still, very awesome movie. When was the first time you saw this movie or first heard of this movie?
Oh, geez. It was well after the release for sure, because I was definitely too young to watch it when it first came out. So I think it had to be when we were in high school that I first saw it.
And let me
But
guess, your famous line was probably, "I love that movie," right?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
there's a reason it's on the back of my letter jacket.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
No. First time I saw it was when we were in high school. I mean, I loved the movie. Don't get me wrong, but especially since spending more time with my brother in the past 10 years, he's a huge nerd when it comes to like dinosaurs, paleontology, like the history of dinosaurs. So definitely in the last 10 to 12 years, I've watched a lot more Jurassic Park stuff just being around him because this is one of his all-time favorite movies. And he loves talking about all things Star Wars.
Ooh, wrong
Jurassic
movie,
Park.
wrong
Yeah,
movie.
my bad. My
Hey,
bad.
but
I got
but
it
the
right.
directors are buddies. They are friends.
Yes,
So
they are. Yes, they are.
yeah,
But yeah, no, it's a classic movie. It's a great movie, no matter how you break it down.
yeah. So my first inkling of this movie, I remember my dad had the book. The book came out in 1990, and I got some fun facts on that at the end of the episode, guys. But I remember my dad reading the book. I just remember the dinosaur, and I had no idea. It's like Jurassic Park. I said, "Is that like Disneyland kind of thing?" Well, kind of. There are some references to it.
Yeah.
And I remember my parents were watching, and this is a very dated reference, Entertainment Tonight, when they actually showed stuff about just movies and not like everything else going on in media. And they showed, I think it was the trailer. This is back when trailers were world premiering on TV, so they were premiering the trailer. And I remember my parents watching it. Same thing as The Mummy. They were like, "Oh my God, that looks awesome." And I had no idea what was going on. I said, "Oh, it's dinosaurs. Cool. Yeah, I'll go watch a dinosaur movie, whatever." Um, I hid under my seat for a 70% of this movie. We'll get into that later. But I saw it in 1993 up in New York when we were visiting my grandparents. We went to go watch it. My sisters were too young to go watch this movie. And this was a movie we saw probably 4 or 5 times in the theater. Some of those were dollar theater viewings, but we saw this
Mhm.
movie just as many times as Titanic. And I remember watching it, just like I said, scared out of my mind, hiding under my seat, shaking. And the only other time I got scared of by dinosaurs, and my parents will never let this one go, was the universe of energy with the dinosaurs at Disney World. I hid under the seat, scared to death of the dinosaurs. And so, yeah, I was scared of that movie. And what made it better was either the day after or 2 days later, we saw Last Action Hero. Arnold, I was good. I was good. I was fine. And another great freaking movie that I definitely want to cover on this show. So yeah, Jurassic Park has been around for a long time. It's spawned what, 5 sequels? There's 6 movies. Yeah, it's 5 sequels. We'll get into some of those. We'll
Yeah,
get into
yeah.
some of those later. I'll admit it. I love the Lost World. Lost World, my favorite out of the whole series. JP3, the movie that happened. And please tell me that was not your first Jurassic Park movie. Please tell me you saw the first one first and not
Oh,
JP3
no,
because you said high
original
school.
JP.
Okay.
Yeah, no, original JP was my first
Okay.
Jurassic Park. Yeah. No.
Yeah. We'll cover those two in the future. There's some that are hit or miss in there. After Spielberg left, it kind of for me. It was hit or miss. So yeah, we'll talk about those later. But let's get into the plot crunch real quick. It is basically a really rich old guy found out how to clone dinosaurs. Crap goes wrong, and that's basically the movie. He was supposed to make this big grand park and everything, and yeah, we'll get into it. But that's basically the plot of the movie. Is that's one bad thing after another. Basically, is what happens to me. So I guess you want to go ahead and get into it, the review.
Yeah.
All right, so Jurassic Park actually starts off kind of a little scary in like you see the credits. And what's funny is, like I said, we watched this a couple weeks ago, and they played the new Universal logo. And I told my wife, "Look, they're gonna play the old one right after this. I don't know why they played two of them, but they played the new one and then the old one." And she goes, "That makes no sense." I was like, "Yeah, it makes no sense at all. Why do you need both?" Anyways, that's beside the point. It starts off and you hear that drum, and you're just like, "Oh God!" Even in because when I saw this in theaters, it was in a small theater. We didn't have surround sound back then. It was just a small, tiny screen. And when I'm watching it in the bigger theaters, because we saw The Lost World at Tinseltown. Um, for anybody who's not from here, that's I think Regal Cinema now, I think is who owns it, or Cinemark is what they also were.
Yeah.
Um, but we saw the second one in there, so when we saw the first one in 3D, it was just like boom. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, wow, everything's like. And you got to remember, I was nostalgic as hell, so I'm like jumping in my seat, and I think I was, yeah, I was 27 at this time. So 20 years after I saw this, I told my parents, I said, look, I will not hide under the seat this time. I will not be scared. Anyways, I'm just getting off track here. So you hear this big boom, and they don't even show who's in the movie. They don't have any names except for Steven Spielberg, Amblin Entertainment, and then the title. That is it. That is all you get for the beginning of the movie. And so it's kind of scary. And then you see these trees, and you're just like, oh, well, what's going on here? Now, keep in mind, I've never read the book. I know there are some differences. Some things that happened in the first book happened in the second movie. Some things that happened in the second movie happened in the first book. Some characters that died in the first book died in the or lived in the first book, died in the movie, lived in the movie, died in the book. Blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? So the book is completely different. If they had adapted the book, to what it was, and the movie would have been rated R. So,
Oh, yeah.
and one director in particular, his version probably would have been rated R. We'll talk about him later. So, anyways, you see the trees, you see this big cage coming through, and you're just like, what is this? What is going on? What's in that box? You have no idea, and they're bringing it in, putting it down, and this is Isla Nublar, so this is where the park was. Isla Sorna is where Site B was. I'm sorry, I don't mean to bring up the second movie, but there's multiple islands.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in the second movie. So they're bringing it in, they set it down, and you see Robert Muldoon. I almost said Roland Tembo, wrong guy. Second movie. You see Robert Muldoon sitting there, and he's got the shotgun, and you're like, this guy's gonna mess something up here. He's ready to, he's ready to crack some skulls, basically. So he's telling them to bring it in, and they bring it into the little spot there, and he tells them to step away. So then the guy goes up and he's lifting up the crate. And that's when you hear the Velociraptor. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead of myself. You see the guys through the little hole in the crate, and you hear the sound of the Velociraptor that it makes, which is two dolphins,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so they're jumping back, and you're like, what the heck is this thing? And so the guy's up top, and he's, lifting the crate up. And I always make this joke. This is exactly what my dog does when I let her out of her crate. She charges at the door and just jumps on everything. And I'm like, okay. So he's lifting it up, and the raptor just charges through that door. And somehow with such force that it knocks the cage back, and the guy falls down. And you're just like, uh-oh, everything's going to crap right now. That dude just fell, and he gets pulled. You don't see it, but he gets pulled in. And I used to wonder, how is this guy getting sucked into that cage? Like, you didn't see the claw come out and pull him in, but it's assumed or implied that the raptor grabbed him and pulled him in, and it's like lifting him up, throwing him around, and they're grabbing and trying to pull him out. And they're zapping it with the cattle prods and everything. This is where we get the famous, shoot her line. And it starts going into slow motion, and you see the guy's hand just like, I can't really do it here, but you see it like just ever so slightly, slowly squeezing through, and you're like, okay, that dude's dead.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was not gonna make it. There's no way this guy was gonna make it out of that alive. So any thoughts on that beginning scene? Because that was an intense first, 10 minutes of the movie, like right into a bang.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 minutes, but like just right off the bat, I'm like, is this something I want to see? Because like y'all know I don't do like zombies, like serial killers, like gore. I don't do that stuff.
And that
so I want the first 3 minutes of this movie. I'm like, I might be out.
Yeah. So imagine 7-year-old me. That was the first bit that scared the crap out of me, was that scene. And I'm just like, oh my God. And my dad had to tell me, he's like, it's okay, it's over, it's done, it's good, we're good, no need to worry. But that was not the original, that was not the opening of the book. The original opening of the book, and I don't mean to compare to the book, but the original opening of the book was the second movie. So what happened in the second movie happened in the first book.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I'm kind of going off what my dad told me, because he did read the book, and he told me, well, that happened in this one, that happened in that one. So some things I'm kind of remembering that happened in the book of the first movie, second movie, yada. So we get a crossfade, and it's Donald Gennaro, this guy. He's standing on a raft, and I didn't understand this. I'm like, why is this guy on a raft? Why are they pulling him out? I was a kid. I didn't know what the heck. I was like, where's the dinosaurs? I'm sorry. Where's the dinosaurs? Sorry. So they're pulling him on a raft, and I don't know if they ever say the other guy's name, but he's one of Hammond's guys, and they're digging at their dig site, and he's talking to him. And basically, I didn't understand this scene until I got a little bit older. He's talking about the worker that died, and he's saying, the family's wanting to sue, blah blah blah, because he died at their park. So he's all mad that Hammond's not there to talk to him. He says, I come all this way, and Hammond's not even here to see me. And the guy really doesn't seem to care what he has to say, because he's the lawyer. He's like, whatever. So he's just going on and on and on about, we need to figure something out. We need to figure out what we're going to do here. How are we going to take care of this lawsuit? And they find a bit of, because I kind of tuned this part out a little bit. They find a bit of amber, and I think the guy's name was Jeff. They called him Hefe. I don't know if I'm getting that right, but they called him Hefe, and he came over, and he's talking about, and it's a very short scene. And he sees it, and he says, because that's my wife. He said something in Spanish. I'm like, what is he saying? And he's talking about how pretty it was. And so they're looking at it, and then the quick transition to Grant's dig site, Dr. Grant's dig site. And the music here is actually kind of cool. I like this music. It's like that orchestral or whatever, and they're digging the bones, getting the dirt out and everything. And they find was it a Velociraptor skeleton, right?
Yeah, the Velociraptor claw.
Right, they find the skeleton, and well, before that, they show this is when you first introduced to Dr. Grant and Ellie Sattler, and he's just kind of annoyed, like, doesn't want to be there kind of thing. He's like, we really have to do this again, and it's a machine they have where they can shoot like a sonar into the ground, and it sees not really an x-ray, but it sees the fossil. So that's what they were trying to do. And the guy says, pretty soon we won't even have to dig anymore, because they can just find the skeletons from doing that. I called it the shotgun the shotgun jackhammer into the ground. So
it was, I mean, they bring out a shotgun.
Yeah. Yeah, and so they do that, and it starts showing, and this is like, way old technology, right? So it's like slowly dot matrixing into the screen, and you're just like, oh my god. At the time, we thought this was cool. We're like, that's top of the
Yeah.
line technology right there. Now you're like, oh my
Mhm.
god, it takes forever. So they're trying to look at it, and he's explaining it, and he, he does something. He like puts his hand on the monitor, and it messes up, and he's like, oh, what did I touch? Because he thinks he's the reason technology around him just doesn't work. Like he doesn't get along with it, kind of thing. And so he's talking about it, and he says something. He's talking about the the fossil, the skeleton, and he says it's almost like a bird. And people laugh, and he says, "Oh, I'm serious. I'm not joking. Is the something I forget the line, but he says it means bird of prey." And
Mhm.
so he's talking about it, going on and giving his little speech, and then you hear that little kid. That's not very scary. And
Ugh.
everybody's like, "Uh-oh." And he the way they did it, he turns around and you just see everybody. It's almost like in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You see Indy turn around and all the people kind of just, fan away from him, like they part away. It's like that. Grant turns around and everybody kind of parts away from him, which I thought was kind of cool. And I didn't think about that until just now. I'm like, that is the same camera effect they use, or camera angle they used, and the separation they used in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
So he goes up to that kid. Same kid that's in Friday the wow, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, the Dream Child. He was the Dream Child. I know you probably never seen that movie, but he was in
Nope.
that movie too. So this was like a few years before Jurassic Park, though. So he was like a little kid, a littler kid. And so he goes up to him and he says, he's talking about the raptor, and he's like, raptors are smart, and though, and the kid's just looking at him like, whatever. And then he goes, and they attack you with something like this, and he pulls out the raptor claw, and the kid's eyes just,
Mhm.
he's like, holy crap. And he's telling him, he says, they don't come at you from ahead, they come at you from the side, and then they, slice you here, or across
Mhm.
the belly, spilling your intestines. And
Yep.
he says, the thing is, you're still alive when they start to eat you. And
Mhm.
that's just like, oh my God, I hope I never run into one of those things.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on that whole scene with that kid? Because every time I watch this, I'm like, this kid is so cringe. He irritates me. I know he's
Yeah.
like way older now, but it's like, dude, that kid. God, that kid.
I absolutely wanted to backhand that kid. Every time I watch this movie, I want to backhand that kid so hard. Um, but like when you were talking about the music, I mean, it is John Williams. It is classic John Williams, and you will never convince me that John Williams has produced anything that's bad.
Oh
The
no.
way he uses his strings, he depends on orchestra, like it
Yep.
is beautiful,
Isn't he
gorgeous.
the London Symphony Orchestra, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
He I think his last movie was Dial of Destiny. Was his him and Harrison Ford. It was both their last movies that they. Well,
yeah,
I'm sure Harrison Ford's still acting, but his last come on, come on.
yeah,
He's Indiana Jones. Okay, he's Indiana Jones, Han Solo. His last movie was Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny. That's
yeah.
all I gotta say about that. But yeah, John Williams retired with that movie, I believe. So
Well, he
his
actually retired
oh
before,
he
but
did.
then he agreed to come out of retirement to do Dial of Destiny because he didn't want anybody else having his baby.
Oh no 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 no
I
no
don't
no
blame him.
no
I don't
no.
blame him.
I,
So
I just
yeah, no, he came out of
wish,
retirement for
yeah,
that.
I just wish Spielberg was there for it, because I enjoyed that movie. I mean, we're not talking about Indiana Jones right now. I enjoyed the movie, but it needed Spielberg. Anyways,
Yeah.
so there, and she goes, if you really wanted to scare the kid, you could have pulled a gun on him, you know, and he goes, can you believe
Well,
that
every time, because my brother has that raptor claw at
Mhm.
his house. Every time I'm over there and he brings it out, I think of this scene
Yeah,
every time when he's like he cuts you here or here, and I'm like, can you put the raptor claw down, please?
yeah, and so
Put it down.
so so he's like, you want one of those? And she goes, they're not so bad. He goes, oh, kids are terrible, they smell. And he's like, kids don't smell. He's like, baby smell. So then this helicopter comes in, and this is when they're talking about, having kids one day, because Grant and Ellie are an item. They're a thing. They're a couple. Um, and this helicopter comes in, and everybody's freaking out because it's like messing up the dig site, and they're telling to cover up the skeletons, cover it up, blah, 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 blah. And so the Grant goes up to the helicopter and he's telling the guy, shut it off. No, Grant, why are you this close to the
The
come on?
blades.
Why are you that close to the blades, my guy? Um everybody knows you don't get that close to a damn helicopter when it's spinning
Yeah.
like that. So he's telling the guy, shut it off, and the guy's pointing and he's trying to, what are you saying? And he's pointing, go to your trailer. So he goes in and you see Santa Claus. No joke, he played Santa Claus.
Yeah.
No, it's John Hammond. He pops open the champagne and he's like, hey, we were saving that, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? And he introduces himself, and I think he was the one funding their dig, is what he was saying. He was like one of their biggest contributors or something like that, to their dig site and everything. And then he's like, oh, you're John Hammond. Okay, I'm sorry. And so Ellie comes in. She's like, who's the, jackhole that blah, blah. He's like, Ellie, this is John Hammond. She's like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And, this and that. And he starts talking about his park. He says, I want you two to come for the weekend to check it out and endorse it possibly. And he's just going on and on and on about this park. And he's not saying what anything is, not talking about anything. And after he's done doing his thing, they're like, we don't know. Or he says, what kind of park is this? And he goes, it's right up your alley. And they're like, I don't know about this. He goes, how about I fund your dig? And they're like, well, and he's like, for a further 3 years or like a further 3 or 4 or 5 years. And they're like, oh, well, in that case, sure, let's do this. And they're excited and, they start hugging and everything. And I think I might be jumping ahead, but isn't this where we see Nedry in this next scene?
I think it is jumping ahead a little bit, but
Okay.
I mean, because you hear them talking like right before Hammond shows up, you hear them talking about funding drying up. Because they're talking about we need more of this, and then they're just like, the funds are gone. We don't have anything, which is perfect lining up to, I'll fund your dig some more.
Right, and so yes, I don't know exactly when it happens. So we're gonna talk about Nedry because I don't want to skip it. You see, no, isn't this when? I get these scenes mixed up, but isn't this when it skips right to them in the helicopter, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
We'll talk about Nedry after that. So they're in, let's talk about Nedry first because I don't know exactly when it happens. I'm trying to remember because they're both scenes happen together. So you see this guy in this straw hat or whatever in Costa Rica. And he's looking for somebody. He's walking around this restaurant, and you hear Nedry. You see Nedry or Newman, if you're a Seinfeld fan, Newman or whatever his name was in Space Jam. He's yelling out Dotson, and he goes, "You shouldn't use my name." And he starts saying it over and over. He's like, "Dotson, Dotson, we got Dotson here," and he's like, "See, nobody cares." And he's talking about, you got the thing, and he pulls out the Barbasol can, and he says, it's what is it? No menthol. So like the shaving cream doesn't have normal shaving cream stuff in it, so he puts it on his pie, which is disgusting. But he's showing Nedry how to use this, and he squeezes it. And Nedry's just laughing, and then when he pulls it open, you hear this squeak when he laughs, and I don't know if it was him or the bottle, but I laugh every time I see it because I'm like, did that dude just squeal like a pig? If you watch them, I've seen the movie enough times to just hear it. My sisters and I used to laugh at it all the time. We're like, that dude just squeaked. So he's telling him, here's where we're going to put all the embryos and the DNA and everything, because that he needs them for his park, Biosyn. More on that in a later movie. Yep. They also played a part in one of the video games. And so I think Biosyn is in the books, to be honest, which is why it's in one of the games. So he's trying to get his rival park going, and he's telling Nedry, you got to be here by this time, otherwise you're out of luck. You're SOL. Bye. You're not gonna get there. And so he's, telling him you have this much time to do this, to take care of it. And this is when the person brings the check. And he looks at it and he goes, "Don't get cheap on me, Dotson. Like, pay for it. Pay for my meal." And so believe that is when we see the. Like I said, I think I jumped ahead, but that's when we see the helicopter. They're going through. You see the famous. Well, actually, let's jump back a little bit. Any thoughts? Like when you first saw this, what did you think of Nedry? Did you think he was up to something, or did
Oh,
you kind of know when they gave
you
him
can
the Barbasol can?
you can tell immediately just the way he's acting because the first one that Dotson, whenever you see Dotson, he's immediately acting like the stereotypical spy.
Very wormy.
Yeah, very like covert trying. And then Nedry, the way he's acting, it's very obvious off the bat that he's the wormy guy
Yeah.
and up to no good. But what always cracked me up was the Barbasol can, because that Barbasol can is the same shaving cream that my dad always used when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And I always remember because he always poured a sink full of really, really hot water
Mhm.
and then put his Barbasol can in the hot water and let it sit there before he started shaving his face. So as soon as I saw this in the movie, I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, well, the actor that played Dotson, he's not a very good person in real life. Let's just say that.
Oh.
He went to prison for a bit. I'll tell you off recording. Um,
Oh.
so just remind me.
Okay.
So the actor in the last movie was a different person completely. To play the
Oh, it
character.
was? I
Yeah.
thought it was the same
No,
person.
different guy. Different guy. But Dotson is in the second book. He does show up in the second book. I think he dies in the second book, if I'm not mistaken. Again, we'll talk about that death in the second movie because his death does happen in that movie, but to somebody else.
Mhm.
So yeah, then we see the helicopter, and this scene has been parodied in so many things. It was parodied in The Simpsons when they go to Itchy and Scratchy Land. I think it was parodied in something else. They even did the same shot in Jurassic World with the helicopter going towards the island.
Yep.
Same exact shot and everything. Kind of cool. So this is when you meet my boy, Dr. Malcolm, played
Mhm.
by Jeff Goldblum. Nobody else, I don't care what you say, nobody else could have played this character better than he could
No,
have. Nobody.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Nobody could have played this
I've never
character
heard
better
of
than him.
anybody suggesting somebody else. That's just
I
no.
I think they had some other people in mind. I will talk about it later. Just this is
Oh,
theories that I've heard in like various videos on YouTube and stuff. But
no.
yeah, I got the whole list here on people that were supposed to be in the movie. I could be wrong. I think it just has like the directors and everything. Um, so yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. There we go. Got it. Um, so yeah, you're talking. They're talking to Dr. Malcolm, and you have the. He goes, you guys are paleontologists or something. I forget what the word he
Mhm.
says. And they say, I see you've met Dr. Malcolm. He's our chaos theory guy. Um, and he said, I think who brought Malcolm? Was it Hammond that brought him? Because the
Yeah, I think
lawyer's in there
Hammond,
too.
yeah, I think Hammond invited all of them.
Okay. Well, the lawyer has to be there because he's got to make
Well,
sure
yeah,
the park is good to go.
yeah,
And so he's they're just talking to each other, and Malcolm's being a little flirty with Dr. Sattler. Not just once, multiple times in this movie. Being a little flirty with her, and Grant's just sitting there like, hey, whatever. I don't even know why I'm here. Um, and they're just talking, hey, here we go. This is it. They just He says, I bring the rock star, you bring the lawyer. I think that was one of the lines they said. Because he's referring to Malcolm as the rock star because he looks like a 80s or 90s hairband guy.
yeah.
Um, and Malcolm was one of my favorite characters in the entire series, both first and the second movie. I even had all the toys for him. I have one down here that I bought at Target. It was the 1993 classic Jurassic Park figure, and I saw Dr. Anna said, "Oh, they got Malcolm. I got to find Malcolm. Do they have him?" And I found him in the aisle and everything. So they're going on and on and on and on. And Dr. Hammond looks over and he's like, "There it is." And that's when you hear the music kick in, the famous theme song kick in, and they're landing. And I feel like when I watched this recently, I was like, they really were playing this song a hell of a lot in this span of like what 5 minutes. Just it's funny they're playing it while Dr. Grant's struggling to get his damn seatbelt on, and they're trying to like everybody's buckling in because there's turbulence and everything. Everybody
Hmm.
buckles in okay, and he gets two female ends of the seatbelt, and he's trying to hook them together, and they're just trying to figure it out. And oh, you put that thing and that thing, and you hear Hammond go, "Well, we'll have landed by the time you figured it out." So he just takes both of them and ties them together like a freaking shoelace, and he looks down like, "Hey, I
Right.
did it," And so they land, and it jumps into yeah they get immediately into the jeeps. Number I think I got it right here. Jeep number 29. No, it just says visitor pass 1993.
Ah,
I do have a Jeep 29 in something. I got a Jurassic Park thing on my wall that I have not opened. It's a collector's edition thing, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave that in my box.
yeah.
Um, it's got the whole banner that says "When dinosaurs ruled the earth."
Hmm.
Where am I gonna put that? I have no freaking idea. It is for the 25th anniversary. Anyways, so they get in the Jeeps. They're driving around. They're going through all kinds of gates and everything, and they stop. And you're just like, and it's funny because all the guys who work there, they know exactly what's going on, and they still Grant and Ellie and Goldblum, Malcolm still don't know what the heck this island is, and they're stopped, and Grant looks over, and that's the famous scene where he gets up and just glasses off and everything. He's like, oh my god. And Ellie's talking about this giant leaf. Like, yeah, who cares about the giant leaf? And he just grabs her head, turns her, and she's like, what do you want? And she looks and does the same exact, gets up like, oh my god. And that's when you see the Brachiosaurus. Now, I get sad and emotional about this Brachiosaurus because if you've seen Fallen Kingdom, you know exactly why that scene is kind of emotional. We'll talk about
Hmm.
that later. And they're just like, oh my god, they're dinosaurs. This is the park that he's talking about. This is crazy. This is a dinosaur park. And Malcolm, you crazy son of a bitch, you actually did it. And so he that's when he tells them, oh no, not yet. I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself. They get out of the car and they're walking up to the Brachiosaurus. And the CGI was for its time was great. When you look at it now, you're kind of like, it's a little dated. A
Yeah.
just a smidge. Still unbelievable how they pulled that off. I think if you watch it in HD, the CGI kind of looks like, ooh, that's a little rough
Yeah.
these days, especially with the T Rex in some scenes. So they're looking at it. The Brachiosaurus jumps up to get a leaf from a tall tree and then drops down. That's when Malcolm says, "The crazy son of a bitch, you did it," and he does that smile, that like laugh smile thing. And I said, "That's me." When I'm watching this damn movie for the 20th anniversary, like I had that same stupid dumbass smile on my face.
Yeah.
Um, and so he's telling him about all the dinosaurs and everything. He says, we've clocked the T Rex at however many miles, and he's like, well, you got a T Rex, and he's like, yeah, we have a T Rex, and he like I'm gonna throw up. He gets down like I'm gonna vomit, and that's when he says, Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Grant, welcome to Jurassic Park. But what when you first saw this, because it was much later than when the movie came out, and you hadn't
Mhm.
seen any Jurassic Parks prior to this, right? Okay. So what were your thoughts going into it, seeing that Brachiosaurus? Because this would have been 2001 ish when you saw it for the first
Around that
time.
time, yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I mean, I it was a very, I mean, it's your typical Spielberg shot with
Yeah.
John Williams music. It's very sweeping, very grand, and seeing the Brachiosaurus moving around so well. Because I mean, even now, '90s CGI, it's holding its own for the time period. It was
Yeah.
I remember kind of just my jaw dropping on the floor, getting
Mm,
so impressed by it.
yeah. Yeah. That was a heck of a scene. And I think after this is when they go to. I think it cuts to the tour. Um,
Mhm.
I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit because the kids aren't with them yet.
Yeah.
They cut to the tour, and he's, they're sitting down and everything, and Hammond's trying to do his introduction, and Hammond always reminded me of my grandfather. He always looked like my grandpa, just not British. So it's a little sad when I see it and think about him too, because he enjoyed this movie also.
Mhm.
So they're sitting there and he's trying to do the introduction, like what's usually going to happen on this tour, um, and he sees John Hammond on the screen, and he's like, "Hello, John. Oh, hello. How did I get here?" And he's like, "Well, I cloned you." Blah blah blah, going on about that. And he says, "I just need a little bit of your blood." Pretends like he's poking him, and he's like, "Oh, that hurt." But then he starts cloning more John Hammonds. He's like, "Oh, hello, John. Hello, John. Hello, 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 hello." And they're going on and on and on about it. And so after that is when the seat latch bars come down, and I think Mr. DNA shows up and starts talking to them. He's like, here at Jurassic Park, we were making the dinosaurs. My sister
I
does
know.
it better.
Amen. I.
My sister does that so much better. I have a Funko Pop of Mr. DNA. I'm glad I bought him because that thing's, I can't find him anywhere ever. Every time I see him at a Comic Con, they want to charge like $50 for it. Bought it for 12. And
Yeah.
so they're going on and on. He's going on talking about his, the how they cloned the dinosaur, where it came from, and the amber at the beginning plays a part right here. They talked about how they got the DNA from the blood in the mosquitoes that bit the dinosaurs, and then they I guess got a little drill, put it into the amber, drilled into the amber, and put a syringe in there to get the blood from the from the mosquito to clone the dinosaurs. And he's talking about basically what they taught us in school, how DNA works. I actually think even one teacher in one grade, she showed us that scene to help us understand how DNA worked. I'm like, hey, can we watch the whole movie though? Maybe that's biology, right?
Right.
Um, and so yeah, they're going on this tour, and when they see the people in uh the egg room where they hatch the eggs, so after that, Mr. DNA talks about this is how the dinosaurs are made. Now here's a baby dinosaur, and it turns into a brontosaurus, and it's just walking around. The Ham is talking about how the kids are gonna love this. It's a cartoon, and so oh no, no, that's when the latch bar is going. Sorry, that's when the latch bar is going, and they start moving, and they see the eggs where they have all the dinosaur eggs. I think they had ostrich eggs in there too. Is what they said? And Grant's like, wait, 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 what about this? What about that? And Ellie's like, can we see the unfertilized eggs? And the lawyer goes, are these and this stupid moron, are these auto? I think he was going to say auto robotic. He says auto erotic. I'm like, ooh, I don't think you were supposed to say that, sir. Um, or the way he said it made it sound like that. I'm like, okay, I think he means, are they animatronic? And
Yeah.
John Hammond, no, 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 no. This is the real deal. We spared no expense. Take a shot every time he says spared no expense. I swear you'll be
Hammered.
gone by the first like 30 minutes of this movie. Because he says it a lot. We spared no expense. So this is when they're talking about, can we see the eggs? And he's like, no, no, you can't. It's more of a ride. And they push it up, and bye bye. And Lord, hey, you can't do that. Can they do that? I'm like, shut up, dude. Nobody cares about you. Shut up. So they go into the
You can't I mean, you can't pass by this and say that this is not a total carousel progress.
oh my god, best ride at Disney World. Don't anybody tell me it's not. My wife and I love that ride. Real quick, the only reason we went on it one time, I think I'd been on it like when I was a kid too. The only reason we went on it on our honeymoon is because we were trying to get out of the dang rain because it was raining so bad. And I said, well, let's just go into this Carousel of Progress and see what this is about. And so we're just like, at first we're like, what is this? Okay, whatever. And by the end of it, we're singing the damn song, Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. And
Oh
so
yeah.
she went on it again, or she wanted to go on it a second time. I said, let's go, let's do it again. Yeah. And so the second time, we're just the whole time singing and dancing, and people were looking. I was like, the hell's wrong with you? So when we went this past February, we did it again. My sister and her boyfriend are looking at her like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, hey, look, you don't diss the Carousel of Progress, all right? But yeah, no, that was Carousel of Progress. No joke, that's what that was. So
Yeah.
they get out of the ride, And they are going into the egg room, and the lawyer's like, "You guys can't do that." And Hammond's like, and he gets up too, like, "Hey, screw it, let's go." And so they're looking at all the eggs, and nobody at any moment is like, "Hey, you can't be in here. What are you doing in here?" Nobody stops them. They're just like, "Oh, yeah, hey, how you doing?" And Dr. Wu looks at him like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" Dr. Wu was also in an episode of the X Files, and he was in 3 or 4 episodes of American Horror Story Apocalypse, and he was also in all the other Jurassic World movies. So, anyways, he's talking to him, and they're looking at the eggs, and the little robot arm is picking up one of the eggs, and it's, they see an egg's about to hatch. So he's talking. No, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. He's talking about, the dinosaurs, are female. And a lot of people, when they talk about the new ones, they talk about the T-Rex, and they said he. I'm like, that's a lady dinosaur. If do you not remember the first movie, no, every dinosaur in the park on the island is a female. So they're going on about that, and they're talking about how they like genetically made them that way so that they wouldn't breed.
Mm-hmm.
And Malcolm, how do you know they're all female? Well, you look up their skirts, and that's when he talks about, no, we genetically modified them. And Wu and Malcolm are kind of getting into this little bit of a little bit of a small argument kind of thing. Like, I'm one up you every time. I don't know if you noticed that, but I noticed it one time I was watching. I was like, he's trying to one up this guy, and Malcolm starts giving his little speech, and that's when you get this life finds a way. No, it's
Finds a
not
way.
that long, but still, he does say the life finds a way here. I got that from Family Guy. They watched something, and Chris did something in his I forget what happens. His pants like gave birth or some weird thing. I don't know what happened exactly. And Lois goes, how does this happen? And Peter goes, life finds a way. So that's when you see the egg start to hatch, and the
Mm-hmm.
robot arm comes and picks it up, and they're all excited. Oh my god, a dinosaur is hatching, and you see it pushing through, and Hammond's like, come on, push, like he's the doctor. Well, Dr. Hammond.
Yeah.
um and it finally gets through, and they're getting the egg out, and Grant's got the shell, he's looking at it, and the robot, and he's like, oh, what, I was looking at that. So Grant's holding the dinosaur. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
what this is, and he goes, what species is this? And Wu looks up, and he's like, oh, Velociraptor, like nonchalantly, like, well, yeah, okay, whatever, it's a Velociraptor. He's like, you breed raptors? And Hammond just looks at him with that smile, and that's when you see the raptor cage, and Muldoon's standing out there. Oh no, sorry, Grant is standing out there looking at the raptor cage, and they're all up there, and Muldoon comes up, and he's like, they should all be destroyed because of what happened. And he's talking about, we got the raptors here, and he's talking about the big one. We don't know which one is the big one, but he's saying, how they don't. I think this is when they're talking about the electrified fences. Like, how do you keep them out? And he says, all the fences are electrified. And he goes, I'll tell you one thing: they won't attack the same spot twice. So they could go attack one spot on the left, it gets zapped, and they won't go back there. They'll go somewhere else and find a way to get out of there. And I don't think they mentioned the guy dying in this spot, did they?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, they're basically just discussing the raptors and how they're the most dangerous. One of the most dangerous animals on that island is the Velociraptor. And then you hear this crane, and you're like, "Oh, what's going on?" There's a cow, and Ellie's like, "What are they doing?" Hammond just feeding it. And you're like, "What? Huh?"
Mm.
Any thoughts on that? The whole feeding the cow to the raptor.
Yeah, as soon as I saw them lifting the cow in and like seeing trees start to like just jiggle around
Rustle,
and
yeah.
everything, I'm like, okay, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's probably one of the only scenes I'm not particularly a fan of, is the cow, because I'm like, oh, not the cow. What did the cow do? So they drop the cow in, and you hear the cow mooing. It's kind of upsetting to hear, because you hear the cow mooing, getting torn apart and everything, and then they pull the thing up. This is when they're explaining all the, hey, they don't attack the same place twice, and he's telling them about the raptors, how dangerous they are, and then it stops, and you hear the crane coming up, and then just shambles of where the cow was being held, and just Surprisingly, no blood or guts. I was surprised why they didn't have. You would think a cow just got like ripped apart. There should be, but again, it's a PG-13 movie. They're not going to show all that
Yeah, that would have gotten the rated R rating.
until later in the movie. We'll talk about that
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
So that comes up, and Hammond, who's hungry, and so they have dinner, and they give Ellie this chicken. I'm when she looks, the way she looks at it, I'm thinking she might be a vegetarian, just the way she looks at or she lost her appetite and wasn't hungry after seeing that, because she just looks at it, she's like, I don't know if I can eat this. Um, and this is when they're talking about, when they open the park and how they're gonna do things. Maybe, and Lawyer says maybe we can have a coupon day, and they're talking about these tickets, and I think the tickets they said were like gonna be like hundreds of thousands of dollars to go there. Um, and I think Malcolm kind of gets into an argument. No, he does. He gets a little irritated with Hammond, and they're talking about. See, this is one of the scenes I tune out a little bit, and nobody seems to really be on Hammond's side, and they're kind of just asking, "Well, what about this? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? What if these things happen? This and that. How can you do this? How can you do that?" And he's just like, I invited you guys here to see this, and none of you are on my side. What the heck? What is going on here?
Mhm.
The only one who's on his side is the lawyer, and he says, basically, he said earlier in the movie, if my investors aren't happy, then I'm not happy, and we'll have you shut down. So, like I said, he's there to not investigate, but just make sure everything is good, and there's going to be no
Mhm.
hiccups at all. Nothing. Knock on wood. So yeah, that scene ends, and they're going downstairs, and this is when the grandkids show up, Tim and Lex. And somebody told me, is her name Lex Murphy? I said, yes. No, it's not Alex Murphy like RoboCop. No, Lex. Her name is Alexandra, I believe, her full name. So I was like,
Mhm.
no, not Alex Murphy. Anyways, they show up, and they're, all excited, and he's like, did you get the presents I sent? And they're like, yeah, and they're just being kids, excited and everything. Oh, everything went up in the air. And Ellie looks at Grant, he's just like, he doesn't actually do that, but he's just like, no.
Yeah.
So this is when the famous Jeep comes up, the jungle printed Jeep with the red, yellow, and green. My favorite Jeep in the movie. I didn't even get. That's the only toy I didn't own was that one. I was so mad that I never got it. Um, so they're in there. They're picking where they're gonna sit and everything. And Lex walks up to Grant and she goes, "Oh, she said I should sit with you because it would be good for you." And he looks at Ellie and she's just like smiling, like, "Oh, you cheeky son of a." And he kind of just walks away from her like, yeah, yeah, sure, whatever. And then Tim comes up to him and he's just overly excited about talking to Dr. Grant. Just
Mhm.
being a typical kid, just talking, talk, 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 talk. I was like that too when I was a kid. I just constantly talked about something if I was excited about it. And I still do it
Mhm.
actually. So Grant's trying to get away from him. And he gets in the car and Tim gets in. He's like, which car were you thinking of sitting in? And he goes, whichever one you're in. He's like, okay. So he gets
Yeah.
out, and Tim gets in another car, and he just shuts the door on his kid, like, yeah, whatever. Um, and so they get in the cars, and they start going and everything, and the kids are freaking out. Oh my god, it's driving by itself. If I was a kid and that happened, I'd probably do the same thing, freaking out. Not a really whole lot goes on here. Then you see like the back behind the scenes where Hammond, Muldoon, and our boy Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson, Ray Arnold, he's there. Not one swear word from him in this entire movie. Good, good, good for him. Um,
I'm surprised,
yeah,
as you could tell, he was getting. I think he actually did say it. They just cut it out.
I think you're right. I think I read somewhere that he did say something and they had to cut it out. There's a lot of scenes that were cut out of this movie, and we'll talk about him at the end. But this was 2 years before Die Hard with a Vengeance. That came out in
Yeah.
nine. No, I could be wrong. It's either a year or 2 years before Die Hard with a Vengeance came out. So I knew who Samuel L. Jackson was from. I didn't know his name back then because I was just a kid, but I knew who he was. I was like, that's the guy from Jurassic Park. And they're doing all their system checks and everything, and hey, the perimeter fence is working, this is working, that's working, that's working, that's working. And then Hammond talks about the voice you're hearing is some guy. And he goes, spared no expense. I'm like, oh, there we go again. Oop. There you go, spared. And I think this might be the last time he says it for a while. So they're going on, and I think this is the part where he starts talking to Nedry, like, "Hey, Nedry, have you done this to make sure these perimeter checks are good?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll take care of it." He's like, "Okay, I'll take care of it." And they get into like this argument, and I think he calls him. He's like, "Okay, Dad," and that makes Hammond mad. And he's like, "It's not my job to this. It's your job to take care of this stuff, not me." He's like, "I'll take care of it, okay?" And they get into a little bit of an argument, and Hammond walks away, and then it cuts back to the cars. Sorry, I jumped way ahead. Sorry. After they get in the cars and start going forward is when they go into the gate, and this is when Malcolm goes, "What do they got in there? King Kong." Hilarious, because King Kong and Jurassic Park are both at Universal Studios.
Yep.
And that's when Hammond says, the voice you're hearing is this guy, Richard something. And then after Hammond and Edger get into that little tizzy, they go back to the cars, and I think this is when they start talking about the Dilophosaurus, and everybody gets excited, like, "Oh my God, Dilophosaurus! We've never seen it before." And you see nothing. You see no Dilophosaurus, no dinosaur whatsoever. Okay. And so I think after that is when you see these sick Triceratops, right?
I think so. Yeah.
They go, oh no, sorry. No. I'm sorry. Got ahead of myself. They go to the T-Rex.
Oh,
They go to the T-Rex paddock, and this is not the T-Rex scene. This is when they're going through the first time, and they're like, "Oh, the T-Rex," and they're just sitting there. Where's the T-Rex? And this is when the goat comes up. Lex is like, "What's gonna happen to the goat?" Tim says something, and she goes, "He's gonna eat the goat."
I think the Triceratops part is first, because as soon as the goat thing happens, that's when the power goes out.
No. The goat comes up first. So the T-Rex in the daytime, the T-Rex scene in the daytime at the cage is first, because the goat comes up, and I believe it cuts back to Hammond and all them, talking about making sure the oh no, I'm sorry, I get ahead of myself again. Yeah, the T-Rex scene happens, not the scene, the first scene where they actually see the goat in there asking, what's going to happen to the goat. And so Tim says something about the goat, like they're going to eat it. And she goes, "He's going to eat the goat?" Yeah, you never had lamb chops, kid? So yeah, nothing happens there. So they move it. And this is when the Triceratops scene comes up. They see the sick Triceratops, and they all get out, like they're kind of doing this little talk, and Malcolm and Grant and Sadler are in the car talking about, this is when the scene comes up. God creates man, man creates this woman, inherits the earth. That's where where that scene is. That's why I said the T-Rex scene happened first, because they're looking up, like looking for this thing, like, where the heck is it? So yeah, then the and he's trying to show her some trick with water and everything, and I think Dr. Grant sees the sick Triceratops. That's when he gets out, and she gets out too, and Malcolm's like, "Huh," and here I am now talking to myself. That's chaos.
Okay.
I used to say that all the time when I would start streaming. It was just me. I'm like, here I am now talking to myself. That was back when I first started, though. So he sees a Triceratops, and Muldoon's like, "I told you to put locking mechanisms on the door. What the heck? What's going on?" Or maybe it was Hammond that said that. One of them said, they're both British. I don't know. One of them said it. And they're kind of mad because they got out of the cars, like they weren't supposed to get out of the car. And Grant wanted to see this Triceratops because he's talking about, this is my favorite dinosaur when I was a kid. And he's like up against it, like, letting it breathe. There's even a meme where he's laying on Malcolm's chest later in the movie, and Malcolm's breathing, and he's just like, I'm like, Jesus. I got the pop for that, by the way. Not that, but the Malcolm laying down. I got the pop for it somewhere. That was a hard one to get. So they're looking, and Sadler's asking, why is it sick? What happened? And this is when Dr. Harding, any relation to Sarah Harding, maybe? I don't know. I think there's a theory going on about that. That guy is actually in the Jurassic Park game for PS3. It's a Telltale. It's kind of like the Batman Telltale games. I have yet to play that Jurassic Park one, but he's in that game, and that's a whole what happened to the Barbasol can story. So he's talking about them, and we're talking to them, and she looks at these plants, and she says, "Is this some poisonous plant?" He's like, "Yeah, we know they're toxic with the animals. Don't eat it." Well, somehow that Triceratops got sick. No, wait. Sorry. I got ahead of myself. This is the scene after they're talking about this, and she's, I need to investigate the droppings. He's like, "Dino droppings," because
Yeah.
he's got to repeat himself with everything he says. And she's like sticking her hands in this big pile. He walks up and has one big pile of,
Yeah.
can't say it on here. Um, she's sticking her hands in there and everything, and looking at it and looking through it. I'm like, it's probably just a giant pile of chocolate or something, is what it looks like. So she walks away, and he's like, "You'll remember to wash your hands before you eat anything." And I think this is when it cuts to Nedry and all them, and this is when he starts talking to Nedry. "Did you do all this?" And he's like getting, um, antsy with him, like, "Yeah, I did it, okay." And because he says, Hammond says, "What, 2 no-shows and 1 sick Triceratops?" Because I think he was supposed to have more people show up to the event,
Yeah.
and they didn't. He starts messing with or talking to Nedry, and I think, isn't this the scene where, or maybe it's like the next couple scenes over, because I think it goes back to the Triceratops, and it starts raining. It's like thundering, and the
Yeah.
lawyer's like,
Just
"Doctors, if you please, I think we got to get out of here now
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
it's
I was just
about
about
to."
to say this is also where they start noticing the hurricane is starting to roll in
Yes,
on the
yes, the
radar.
hurricane's rolling through, and they're like, "We need
Yeah.
to get out of here."
Mhm.
And I think it goes back to Nedry talking to the guy on the phone. He's like, "Yeah, get him more time. I got to get out, blah, 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 blah." He says, "No,
Mhm.
the captain says we got to go. We got to go. We got to get out of here." Um, and this is when he's like, "Okay, I got to do this myself." And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to the soda machine. Anybody want anything?" Go, "No,
Yeah.
Nedry, we don't want anything." He's like, "Okay." And he pushes something on the computer, and I think they were supposed to shut the systems down, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
'Cause he does the thing with his watch, and he, he does this, weird thing with his watch timer where he's, using both hands
Yeah.
to hit stuff on his keyboard.
And start the timer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he shuts it off, and he's sneaking through. Uh, I mean, we knew he was a snake, and he's sneaking through, just going through, getting all the DNAs. Like
Mhm.
he's timing where the camera's gonna shut off, because he's looking at his watch, counting down. And when no, I think he's counting down until it unlocks, right? Till the door unlocks.
And yeah, until he, powers everything down.
Right. So
Yeah.
then he's able to sneak through and go into the embryo room, and he's just taking one of everything.
Yep.
Um, and you seen all the names: T-Rex, Velociraptor, Brachiosaurus, Triceratops. And so I think after this is when it goes back to Grant, and because remember, Ellie was like, "I'm gonna go back with Dr. Harding," or
Yeah.
and go back to the building and everything. So it goes back, and they're in the cars, and I think they're just talking. Grant and Malcolm are talking, and he's just going on and on, and "Oh, you two are the thing." He's like, "Yeah," and he's, "You got any kids?" No. He's like, "Oh, I'm always looking for future Mrs. X Malcolm."
Yeah.
um or X Mrs. Malcolm. And
Mhm.
then I think the cars just stop, like, because the power is shut off, right? Or maybe this is when Nedry's running around getting it's kind of blended together, like they're all kind of happening at once, like simultaneously. So the power stops, and Grant goes, "Oh, what did I do?" Malcolm's like, "Yeah, you didn't do anything. We just stopped." And that's when you see the computer just flashing. All the systems are shut down. What the heck is going on? And Ray Arnold, Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury, he's like, he's naming everything that's just going wrong right now.
Yeah.
And he says they need Nedry. And Hammond goes, "Find Nedry, check the vending machines." People assume he was body shaming him. It's not the case. He did say prior in the scene right
Yeah.
before, "I'm going to the soda machine. Does anybody want anything?" He wasn't going to get food. He was making up an excuse to get out of there
Yeah.
and take care of business, right? So he says, "Check the machine." And I think, is this when he asked Muldoon, he said, "Where did the vehicle stop?" And he says, "A Tyrannosaur paddock," right?
Yeah.
Okay. He says that, and then it cuts back to the Tyrannosaur, and you see the big, fence where they were before. You see thing, cuts back to it, and they're just talking, but you see the goat. Goat's just like, whatever, I'm gonna chill here, cool. And I think I don't know if Grant and Ellie are not Ellie, Grant and Malcolm are still talking, but I know Tim finds some. No, is this it? Oh yeah. Sorry. Grant's talking to Gennaro in the car, and then he runs back to the car, to his car. Malcolm's like, the kid's scared, and how's everybody going? He's like, I didn't ask about the kids. He's like, why would they be scared? And he's like, oh, kids get scared. So that after that is when Tim jumps up with the night vision goggles. It scares Lex, and she's like, or the lawyer goes, are they expensive? Yeah, and he's like, or he says, are they heavy? He goes, yeah, and he's like, then they're expensive. Put them back. And Tim's also excited. I'm like, whatever, dude, you ain't my dad. When I was a kid, I thought that was their dad. I didn't understand it because I was a kid.
Oh,
I didn't understand. I didn't realize he was just a lawyer.
yeah.
You don't really meet their parents. You meet their uncle.
Yeah.
No. Peter Ludlow. I think Peter Ludlow was their uncle. I can't remember. Peter Ludlow
Yeah.
was a jerk. Um, Sorry. Second movie. Talk about it later. So he's just looking around, messing with the night vision goggles, and he sees Grant, pouring or getting the rainwater, and he offers, Malcolm some and everything. I don't think they talk in this scene. I think he kind of gives him that, and he's just looking around, right? And they hear the thump,
Yeah.
and Tim's like, "What the heck?" And he looks at the water, and and this is a typical Spielberg scared, worried kid face. He did it with was it Dakota Fanning in War of the Worlds? He did it with Drew Barrymore in E.T.
I can't.
Um,
I watched War of the Worlds. I cannot watch it again just because of Dakota Fanning irritates the hell out of me
I,
so bad.
that movie was not one of my favorites. I saw it and I was kind of like,
Mm-mm.
don't. It's not one of those I can watch again. No, he made he had Drew Barrymore in E.T. just scream like scared. I think he was legit trying to scare her though. I don't think she had actually seen the puppet until that one scene, and she like that was actually her screaming at it because she was scared. He told his wife in Temple of Doom just scream because everybody knows why she was there. If you've seen
Yep.
Family Guy, so he's looking at the cup and he's he's like looking at Lex like giving her the elbow like look. And Gennaro goes, maybe it's the power trying to come back on. And me and my wife are watching this. She goes, sure, the power. Yeah, the power is trying to come back on. Yeah, whatever, guy. And you see the water shaking. And you're like, oh, that's not good. And then he puts the goggles back on. He's looking over at the goat, and you just see the chain swinging. And she goes, oh, they're like, what? Huh? And the camera pans up and you see like above Lex and she's just looking, where's the goat? And then you see the leg drop and it scares them. And oh, no. He looks, but he's still got the goggles on and she asks where the goat is. And then he's looking up and he's taking the goggles off, like, uh-oh. And that's when you see in the car, you see just the T Rex and then it pans up over the car to the outside and he's chomping down on that goat.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Goat is Billy gone. He chomps down on the goat, looks over, and meanwhile the power is out. So you're like, oh crap, power is out, and they are stuck by the T Rex. And Gennaro freaks out, gets out of the car, runs to the bathroom, and this is when we get one of my favorite lines. Where does he think he's going? Oh, when you gotta go, right? And prior to this, the T Rex was like just you could tell the power was out because he's got his hand on the fence, and you're like, uh-oh,
Mm-hmm.
you know crap's about to hit the fan here because I'm sorry, she can get out now. And so when they say when you gotta go, that's when the wires just snap away. And this is one of the most intense scenes in this entire movie. Like every time I watch it, I just get quiet, like, oh my. And this is a scene that scared me half to death and made me hide under the seat. I was just terrified of this. And so he's she's it's broken, and then you just see the T-Rex grab the wires, the rest of them just kind of pull them up, snap them, and he's gone, he's out. she's out,
Yeah.
free. Let's go mess some stuff up. And I think Gennaro, yeah, he'd already run off, so he didn't see any of this. He's in the bathroom, like hiding out. And they're trying to. The T Rex is just walking, right? And for some reason, Lex gets a flashlight and turns it on, and T Rex is like, like a dog. Where's that light coming from? Or a cat, where's the light coming from? And
Yeah.
Grant's like, turn the light
That
off.
with a laser pointer.
Exactly. He's just saying, turn the light off. He's not really telling him. He's just saying, turn the light off.
Yeah.
Turn it off. Thinking, mental mind meld.
Yeah.
Psychotics. Can you hear me, Professor X? Light
Yeah.
off. And then you hear Tim saying the same thing, turn the light off, and she can't figure out how to do it. Is this when he shuts the door? No. Yes, it is. This is when he goes to shut the door. Because the T-Rex is over the car looking. Tim, my guy, my dude, why did you think that was a good idea? To just shut the door like that? I guess he was thinking so it doesn't see them. And if it was me, I would have tried to at least like pull it a little bit. But as a T-Rex, I would have been frozen in time. I wouldn't have been able to move at all. I would have just been like, mm-mm. He wouldn't have seen me. She wouldn't have seen me. So
Exactly.
he shuts the door. And the T-Rex looks down and is like, whoa, hello, there's food in there. And you get the famous scene where the eye comes down and the light's shining in it and the pupil gets really small. We actually learned about that in one of my classes in elementary school. And everybody, no joke, everybody's like, oh, it's like Jurassic Park when the T-Rex with this. And yeah, it is, because this was like 3 or 4 years after the second movie was about to come out when we were talking about this. So it was a good 3 or 4 years after this first movie came out. So, I think that's when Tim was like, turn the light off, and
Yeah.
he turn the light off, turn it off, and Grant's like, turn the light off, yada yada yada, and it stops for a second, and the T-Rex just barges right through the top of the thing. And I would be crapping bricks if this was happening to me. I mean, that is some scary crap. When you really look at it, you're just like, oh my goodness, like these kids are holding up this piece of glass, plastic, whatever, and this T-Rex is just pushing down. That's a lot more weight than both of them combined. And so T-Rex gets done and then is like, oh, fine. Bam! Starts hitting the side of the car and he's like, oh crap. Uh-oh. And it's just knocking, and finally hits it to where it just flips over and Grant looks over like, oh, what? And this is when the T-Rex starts pushing down on the car and biting the tires and everything. If you look very closely, you see a CGI Lex, and it looks very bad. It just looks awful. Yeah. Or maybe it was actually her, and it was CGI around her, but it just looked so bad. Like, you could tell there was a green screen there of some kind. And I'm like, oof, that's... For 2023, that's not very good looking. At the time, it looked cool as hell, but that little bit, I was like, ooh. But so far, what are your thoughts on this scene so far up to this point when the T-Rex is, like, stepping on the car and trying to get to the kids?
All of it was a no moment.
No, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I'm going home. Bye.
Yeah. So, so the T-Rex pushing down on the car, and this is when Grant gets the idea to get the flare. Open up the flare, and he goes out and he's trying to distract the T-Rex, and the T-Rex roars and he just kind of backs up like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I'd probably be doing the same thing. Like, yeah, this wasn't the best idea. And so he's doing that, and Malcolm's over there like, wiping the window down because he can't see what's going on. No, I think that was when the car got knocked over, and Grant looks ahead, and then Malcolm's just like wiping the window down because it's all fogged. And so he's trying to get the T-Rex, and he throws it, right? And then Malcolm gets out and does the same thing. He's trying to get it too. I always love the camera angle of this when you see the T-Rex coming towards Malcolm, and I never knew what... I never realized until later that he was saying Ian freeze. I thought he was saying in freeze. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, but okay.
Whatever. Oh, no, yeah.
And then I watched it later. It's like, oh, he's saying Ian freeze, like, don't move. And so Ian's like, get the kids. And I never could make out what was being said because I was just like in awe, like, oh my God, this is crazy. Especially the first time I saw it, I wasn't even watching. I was down in the seat, buried, scared half to death. It was almost as terrifying as when I walked into American Werewolf in London. Talk about that movie later. So he's and what he's saying is get the kids, and Malcolm's running backwards, and I just love the camera angle, the camera work in this scene where he's running away, and you see the T-Rex just behind him, like on his tail, running,
Mhm.
and I don't know how he hit him. He runs toward the bathroom, and I think doesn't the T-Rex like hit him or something, or step something? He knocks it down, and Malcolm just flies and hits the ground, and you're like, well, did the T-Rex hit him? I never really understood how he went flying. Oh, that's right. Yes, because he's walking towards him, and or sorry, she's walking towards him, and she hits him, and he goes flying, but he also knocks over the thing too, and so he lands. All stuff falls on top of him, and I think the T-Rex might have been standing on his leg or something. Um, so this is when you get the scene. Whole Porta John falls over. Lawyer's sitting there. Probably the best scene of the entire movie. He's just like, you know, okay, I'm sorry, and jump, swings it like basically like a dog, starts shaking him around, and I think that was when I checked out. When I saw that scene when I was 7, I was like, I'm done. No, I'm done. Checked out of this movie. Mm-mm. Um, no, but I've heard people say that when they saw the movie, people clapped because he was a lawyer. They're like, "Yay, ooh." But he was also
Yeah.
kind of a jerk, so he deserved to be applauded for his death in the movie.
Yeah. I mean that's the quintessential comeuppance that every lawyer in every movie
Yep, yep,
deserves.
yep. So this is when. Well, what did you think of that scene when you first saw it? Like, I remember my friend and I. Well, we're not really like friends anymore, but like when I was a child, it's like my childhood friend. But when he watched it, he's like, "Oh, shake his bones out." But what did you think when you saw that scene for the first time?
So, like, I thought it was really cool when he gets out and gets the flare and throws the flare, and the T-Rex starts paying attention to that,
Mhm.
and right when the T-Rex is starting to run away and is getting ready to leave them alone, Malcolm gets out with the other flare, and I'm like,
Yeah,
"You
he screwed it up.
idiot! Like,
He's
it was fine.
yeah,
Nobody needed your help. What are you doing?"
it's exactly. It's like when I let my dog outside and I'm trying to get him back in, and he hears a noise and he's like, "Oh, what was that?" I'm gonna go bark at him. I'm like, "Oh, you were almost in the door." Um, yeah, it was one of those things where it's like, dude, you should have just stayed in the car, man. Stayed there. He wouldn't have seen you. So Grant's trying to get the kids out of the car, and Tim's stuck, but he gets Lex out, and I didn't understand. Again, I didn't understand until way later what she was screaming at. The T-Rex was eating Gennaro. He was sitting there chewing on. I keep saying he. She was sitting there chewing on him, and she screams, and he grabs her like, "Shut your mouth right now. Shh, quiet." And this is
Mhm.
when you see this shot of the T-Rex stepping in the mud, and he's like, "Be still." It can't see us if you don't move, and it gets like right in your face. Same as a dog gets right in your face, it just sniffs, and his hat goes flying.
Mhm.
And T-Rex hits the front of the car, spins it around, and they're following with it, like they're going in the motion of
Mhm.
where it's turning, and they're still trying. Tim's still stuck in the car. They're trying to get him out, and this is when the T-Rex starts pushing the car over the ledge. Something I never understood. There's this big old pit. How the heck did the T-Rex get up over that pit over the wall? And that's something I've never been able to understand. I'm sure there's theories on it in YouTube land. There's a channel I watch that
Well,
talks about that. So
and
they.
that's one of the big, like, movie flubs that I've always noticed
Hmm.
about this, because in the very first part when they come to that T-Rex enclosure, the very beginning, that ground is flush, it's level.
Hmm.
But then when they come to this part of the scene, all of a sudden there's that 100-foot drop.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it didn't make sense. It's a continuity problem, I guess. Because even the goat was on
yeah.
level ground. So yeah, T-Rex starts pushing the this is when he grabs the wire of the fence and he starts climbing over the side, and he's got Lex on his back, and she's like choking him. He's like, Lex, you're choking me. But the T-Rex is pushing the
Mhm.
car over the cliff, over the side of the fence, and
Yeah.
he's swinging from side to side like he's Nathan Drake, trying to get, oh, like, because he knows this thing's gonna go, and he's trying to grab the other wire, and they get it right in time, right when they go to that last right hand side. The thing just goes, and this is on the ride too. goes right off the side there into the tree, and so they're like, "Oh man, this is something else." Like this, like I said, this whole scene was just intense as heck, and I get so like quiet when
Mhm.
I'm watching because I'm just like, I know I've seen this movie a dozen times, but it's still like, damn, that was awesome. I think after that is when we switch back to Nedry, and he's trying to get out of there. Because they haven't, or maybe it was a quick shot of Hammond telling Muldoon to, find the car, get a car, and find his grandchildren, and that's when,
Muldoon and Statler.
yeah, but
Are
Samuel L.
here.
Jackson says I can't get Jurassic Park back online without Dennis Nedry, and that's when we
Yeah.
switch to Nedry getting out of there, and he's driving through this hurricane. He can't see a dang thing. He goes up to the gate that they first came into, not the big wooden gate, but no, he did go up to the big wooden gate, right? Because he hit his Jeep with it and pushed it open. I thought.
Yeah,
He's
because
he's just yeah he's trying to
he
get
had to use the chain the
right.
around the to no, no, that's later. He's using that to pull himself up. Never mind.
Yeah, he pushed the I remember he pushed the metal gate open, the very first gate that they went
Yeah,
through. But then
yeah,
he goes through the big wooden gate, and he's just trying to get out of there. But then you start thinking, is he going the wrong way? He's going back into the park, like what? But he's trying to find a dock. I guess you had to go through the big fence to get to the dock. And he
yeah.
can't see anything, and he runs right into the sign. And I think it was said the dock was left, and he runs right into the sign, and he's like, uh, well, how do I get this? And I think he's already hit the tree stump where he or the big roots where his truck is stuck, like he can't get out of it.
Yeah.
And so he's looking at the thing. He turns it left, turns it right, and then he just spins the whole thing.
Mhm.
So it's at this point when he's trying to get his Jeep out of the spot that he's stuck, and he gets the winch, and he's tying it around a tree. He slips and falls, breaks his breaks his ass basically. Falls
Mhm.
down the hill, and he's like, "Oh, my glasses! I can't see without my glasses." Like Velma. He's talking about I can afford new ones, blah blah blah, and
Mhm.
he's because he was trying to get down the hill first before
Right.
he fell, and so since he's down there, he's like, "Well, I might as well just wrap it around a tree." And this is when you see
Mhm.
the Dilophosaurus. You see the
Yep.
Dilophosaurus jumping around, and you're like, "Oh, there it is!" And he's just like, "Oh, what was that?" Okay, it was nothing. I'm just gonna, walk around. And this is the part I remember from the trailer when he's walking towards the camera and he's got the cable in his hand. And then he sees yeah, he sees it. It comes around the side of the tree, and I think he says "nice doggy" or something.
Yeah.
And he's trying to give it a stick like it's a dog. He's like, "Come on, stick, stupid," and he
Just take
throws it.
fish.
Yeah, he's talking about, you're not as bad as your big brothers and sisters.
Yep.
Um, and he doesn't go over the stick. He's like, "No, I wonder you're extinct. A dinosaur doesn't want a steak, okay? He wants meat."
Yeah.
Um, so he says, "I'm gonna run you over when I get back down here." And he gets up to his he gets closer to the waterfall, and I think this is when the thing comes out and he spits the not acid, but like the stuff. He spits
Like a venom.
the venom. He spits the venom out of him, and it
Yeah.
hits him like right here, and he's just like, "Ooh," and it's like gross and everything. And then he gets back up, and this is when he gets hit in the eye with it.
Mhm.
Gets hit in the eye with it, and he's freaking out, getting it off his eyes. And I always laugh. He goes up and hits his head, dunk right on the truck, falls over, drops the barbasol can. Oops.
Yep.
And people used to say, "Well, how did the dinosaur even get in there?" It's like, dude knocked himself out. The dinosaur walked up that hill and got into his car. It just seems like he was out for a little bit, like a very tiny bit. I think he knocked himself out, and there was enough time to get in there. Anyways, he gets in the Jeep and he's just like, "Okay, I'm good." And then you hear that rattle, and he looks over. It's like, "Oh, well, you are dead, sir.
Yep.
You're done."
Bye.
Um, Nedry's done. Cuts back to the tree where Tim is, and that's when Lex goes talking about he left us, and he's like, "I'm not gonna do that. Okay, I'm not leaving you." Um, so this scene right before this, where Nedry gets eaten, you see the mud falling on the barbasol can, and then the next scene over, I used to think it was poop. Okay, I thought it was poop because that's what it looked like,
Kind of did. Yeah.
and it's just mud. And so the next scene is Grant, getting his head in the water, trying to wash his face off. And I thought it was the same waterfall. I used to think it was the same thing. And he says, and Lex is all scared, and he's like, I'm not gonna leave you. I'm just gonna go get your brother out of that tree. So he's, saying, Tim, you up there? And you don't hear anything. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna climb up the tree. He gets up there and he looks at Tim, and Tim goes, I threw up. He's like, oh, that's okay. But come on, we got to get you out of this car and out of this tree. So he gets him out of the car. And this kind of reminded me of Hook also, because Spielberg did that movie too, with just the trees and everything. And so he gets him out, and he Tim grabs on the Grant, and you hear the snap. Like they're climbing down, you hear the snap. And he's like, I think what happened was because he moved the wheel and it caused the actual wheel on the car to move. So it like
Yep.
jimmied it out of whatever it was stuck on. So
Mhm.
you hear the snap, and he looks up and he's like, oh boy, move. And so they start going down, and the Jeep was just falling super fast all the way down. And he's like, get out of here, get down, get down, get down, get down. And they get to the bottom, and he grabs him just as the Jeep hits the ground. And he's like, okay. And he grabs it, and then it just falls, and it just so happens to fall right on top of them. And he goes, well, we're back in the car again. He's like, oh, at least you're out of the tree. um, and this is kind of where the movie becomes a little blurry to me, because I forget. Oh, yeah. I think, isn't this a scene? Yeah, because they had already left, and I think this is when Hammond says, grab my Jeep and go find my grandkids. Or they had already shown up and everything, and they're looking around, and they see the one Jeep that's there. He lifts up the palm tree, and he goes, I think this was Gennaro. And she goes, I think it was too. And you realize, oh, there's two halves of him. There's one there and one there.
Yeah.
And then you hear Malcolm moaning, and they're like, oh, well, here he is. Let's get him out of here.
Mhm.
So Muldoon's trying to get him up there, and she says, oh, the other car's down here. Let's go look for it. So they go down there, and she thinks he's down there. He's not, because they had already left. And Malcolm's just sitting there in the Jeep by himself. And then you hear the thumping, and he's like, you guys hear that?
This is my favorite part.
Yeah. So he's kind of talking, but nobody can hear him. And then it's getting closer and closer. And then you see them coming back. He's like, we got to go now. Come on. We got to get out of here.
Oh.
And as soon as they get in that Jeep and started up, boom, T-Rex through the brush. And I love that scene when it just
Mhm.
comes through the thing, and you're like, y'all better get the F out of there. That thing's coming for you. It's gunning for you. And it starts getting closer and closer. And this is what I used to think the ride was going to be like, was like this. It wasn't. It was a river ride with a drop that I hate. T-Rex is just zooming at them, and he's like, you must go faster, and he ends up backing up into the stick shift, and he's like, get off the stick, bloody move, and the T-Rex is doing the same thing, hitting the car. And you see him when the T-Rex hits, you see it hit it hits Ellie in the face, like right here, just kind of knocks her. And they're just like, oh my god, she's screaming the S word.
Yeah.
And he's trying to go faster, and you see that one shot that said objects are closer than they appear, and the T-Rex is just roaring, and he's trying to get away, and eventually they manage to speed up and get away from it. And T-Rex is like, whatever, I give up. And he goes, you think they'll have it out on the tour? And so that's when that scene's over, I think, is when you see Grant and the kids, they're walking around somewhere else, and is this when they see the eggs, or is this after? Because this is when they go to the Brachiosauruses, right?
Yeah. So this is, they see the Brachiosaurus and they find the egg, and Lex starts freaking out that it's another.
Is this a Metasaurus? No,
Yeah.
Vegisaurus, Lex, Vegisaurus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Then it
yeah,
sneezes on her.
that's absolutely my favorite line of the whole movie is the must go faster, must go faster.
Yes.
I love it.
I mean, no joke. You definitely wanted to go faster with that one. And so they're talking about the Brachiosaurus, and he's trying to get it closer to her. He's like, don't bring him over here. That's when Tim says it's a Vegisaurus, and then it sneezes on her, and he goes, God bless you. I think he likes you or something. I think he says that. I could be wrong on that.
He does.
Yeah, so they go to sleep, and he gets his raptor claw out, throws it. He's done with it. And then it cuts to Hammond eating ice cream. Wow, where'd that come from? He's eating ice cream because he's talking about how it's gonna go bad. He had this whole thing set up for just all these people, this great fabulous weekend, and Nedry screwed it up for everybody. Well, the hurricane screwed it up for everybody too. Um, Nedry, no, Nedry, it's Nedry's fault. It's his fault. Anytime anything goes bad, computer wise, like work or something, like systems not working, I'm
Nedry's
like,
fault.
oh, Nedry's fault. So Sadler comes in and she's talking to him, and and he's like, oh, when I made my flea circus and this and that, the kids could see it and everything, and she's like, this isn't a flea circus, John. People are dying, and they're going on, and she goes, she eats the ice cream and she goes, it's good, and he goes, spared no expense. Whoop. Again, and that's actually the last time you hear him say it. I think after this is when they wake up and Tim and Lex and Grant are walking around and they see the eggs. And keep in mind, Dr. Wu said the animals are female.
Yeah.
And he's like, they found a way to breed because the
Yep.
eggs have been hatched. And they don't really explain what eggs they were because they definitely weren't raptor.
Yeah.
Could have been compies, maybe.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, they don't really explain what it was. I think isn't this next few minutes just the Alan and the kids?
Yeah, this is where Grant he picks up the eggs and he goes, they're evolving.
Right. That's what he says.
Yeah.
Not they're breeding.
Yeah, they're evolving.
They're evolving. And then I believe this is the next scene is when they're in the field. No, I'm sorry. I think it does cut back to Muldoon and all them and talking about how we need to get the power back on, and he says there's a generator room back here, we can go there and do this, and I think Arnold says he's gonna go. There's a funny line in a movie with Dave Chappelle about this. I won't say it here, but I knew what he was referencing. I'm like, oh,
okay.
Yeah. So he says I'm gonna go check it out, and I think isn't this? Yeah, he's gonna go check it out, and then it cuts back to Dr. Grant and the kids, and they're in the field. Tim's talking as usual, just talking and talking. I'm tired, I'm hungry, stuff like that. And Grant sees the Gallimimus. He goes, Tim, what is that? And he's like, it's a Gallimimus. And he's like, oh, look at it. It's like look at them move like a flock of birds. And he goes, they're flocking this way. And Lex and Tim are like, bye. And Grant's just standing there. And then when he sees them coming towards him, he's like, oh crap, I got to get out of here. And he starts running with them. And so this is a famous scene where you see all the dinosaurs running with them through the field and everything, which is kind of cool. And they go and hide behind this log and they're just watching. And all of a sudden, bam, T-Rex out of nowhere. Just out of nowhere. I was not expecting that. Jumps out, bites one of them, eats them. And, Lex is like, can we go now? Can we get out of here? And Grant's like, yeah, okay. And Tim's like, look at all that blood just standing up. And he's just, yoink, let's go.
Yep.
And then it goes back to, because remember, Arnold was going to the generator, so it goes back to Ellie and all them. And she's like, something's not right. He should have been back by now. What's going on? There's something's not good. And I think I might have missed the part where Muldoon asked if the raptor fences were still on, and Arnold said, yeah, they're still on. And that's when Hammond says, why would he turn off all the other ones? Why would he turn off all the other?
Why would he just turn off the T-Rex?
Yeah, why would he just turn off the T-Rex and everything else? Maybe he knew something that we didn't. So Arnold was supposed to go turn it off, and he didn't come back. So Muldoon and this is the part. No, I'm sorry. We already missed the you didn't say the magic word. They were trying to set the power back on. Yeah. Right. And then they shut it off. This is when you get the whole hold on to your butts line. So I'm jumping ahead. I missed that part, but you get the whole hold on to your butts line. And it didn't work. But you see this little blinky light. And he says, no, that's good. It means it's on. So, we just got to go to the generator room and turn it on. So he says, well, I'll go do it. Then goes back to Ellie's like, something's not right here. What he should have been back. And Muldoon and Ellie, or Muldoon says, sorry, they get the schematics out and they put them over Malcolm's broken leg. And he's sitting there and he says, Hammond goes, When Disney World opened, nothing worked. And Malcolm goes, yeah, but John, when Pirates of the Caribbean shuts down, the pirates don't eat the tourists. Not one cast member gets that joke when I make it every time Pirates of the Caribbean shuts down. I said it last year, no, 2 years, 3 years ago when we went to Disneyland. Pirates happen to be broken, and I said, but let me ask you this, guys: did the pirates eat any of the tourists? And they're like, I don't think so.
All the cast members that work there today are too young.
I'm like, you guys.
That's the unfortunate part. All the cast members that work there today are too young. They don't
There's gonna
understand.
be there's gonna be one who gets it. I'm gonna be like, yeah, fist bump
Mhm.
or mouse bump.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's talking about here's the schematics, here's where you need to go, and Hammond says that line, and he says to Ellie, "Well, I should go because you're." And she's like, no, nay, not happening. We're not doing that today. I'm gonna go. So she goes with Muldoon, and this is when they're walking in the. I think this is. I made a jump ahead, but I think this is when you see the scene of the Gallimimus and everything. So Muldoon and Ellie are walking through the field area, and then you see the raptor cage, and it's panning over. Everything's fine, and then you see where the raptor actually got out, like it chewed through, and you're like, oh shoot, the
Mhm.
raptor got out. These guys are effed. So they have to actually go through an area where the raptors were.
Mhm.
So they're in this little pathway. And Muldoon looks at her and he's like, we're being hunted.
Mhm.
And he tells her, he just says, go now. And she runs, just hightails it out of there, runs like gymnastics and just
Mhm.
Olympic runs, swings up, sticks the landing, and then I think that's when she lands. Or she's, I'm sorry, isn't she still running straight to the, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She runs,
Yeah.
she's
To the door.
bolting through, and then when she gets to the door, she shuts it. And then
Mhm.
she's like, okay, I'm in. And Hammond's like, okay, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go down
Mhm.
here, find all this, this and that, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. Go there. And then I think it pans back to Muldoon and he's getting his gun ready. He's like, I'm going to shoot this damn raptor. I'm going to shoot
Yep.
her like I should have done in the beginning of the movie.
Mhm.
So he's getting his gun ready. He sees one in front of him. And there's a pop for this. I never got it. I wish I had, but there was a pop for this.
Mhm.
In a minute, you'll know exactly what it was. And
Oh, yeah, I
so
know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
he puts his hat down. Muldoon's getting his gun ready. He's looking like, I'm gonna get
Mhm.
you. I'm gonna get you. And you see the raptor in front of him, right? And he is just pointing, right? This is when you get the famous line because the other raptor
Yep.
exactly what Grant said earlier. They get you from the side. Comes to the side. He looks over and he says, "Clever girl," and it jumps at him and just starts. But you don't see anything because it's obstructed by leaves. But it's just chewing the crap out of him, and
Yeah.
Muldoon's dead. I was upset about that. I liked Muldoon. I was upset about his death, but
Yeah.
had to happen. So
Yeah.
then you see the snake going over, which I assume was the second raptor, but they keep saying the big one. So a lot of people theorize there were three raptors, not two.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll talk about why that is in a minute. So
Yeah.
Muldoon's dead. Rest in peace, Muldoon. Unless you played Lego Jurassic World, then he's not dead. He's still alive. There's actually a joke in that game when you spoiler alert when you revisit Jurassic Park in the Jurassic World section. Sorry if y'all haven't seen the movie. Sorry. When you revisit that section, they when you leave, you see Muldoon, Nedry, and Gennaro get up from the Jeep, and they all got like beards and gray hair. So it's assuming they never died. They were just stuck on the island for 20 years. I'm like, that's clever. I like that. You didn't kill them off like you did in the movies. So it goes back to Ellie, and she's going through the area, the tunnel, not the tunnel, the hallways, and he's telling her, okay, follow these pipes to there, and Hammond's getting like confused with it, and Malcolm's like, give me that thing. He's like, all right, do you see this? And she's like, yeah. He's like, okay, follow this, and just keep going until you find the switchboard. She eventually finds the switchboard, and he's like, okay, now you're gonna turn them all on one by one. And she's flipping all the switches, and this is right when Grant and the kids come up to a fence is not electrified, and he does the whole, is it on? And he throws a stick at it, nothing happens, and so he goes up, he's like, being a typical, I'm gonna scare these kids. At this
Yeah.
point, the kids are growing on him, okay, so he's like, because they went through a traumatic event with the T-Rex and everything, so he's sitting there, okay, well, maybe we can, fit through here. And they hear the T-Rex roar, and both of the kids are looking back, and they're like, let's climb this fence. And so they're climbing up, but Ellie's pushing all the buttons, and then you see all the names of all the different paddocks, everything, and then you see that bottom one that says main perimeter fence. And so she hasn't gotten to it yet, but they're like pretty much over the fence, and they're coming back down, and Grant and Lex are already on the ground, and Tim's still trying to he's still like halfway down, and she gets to that switch, or I think she hit the switch and it turned everything on, like it just blaring the alarm that, hey, these fences are
Yeah.
coming back online, so get away from them.
Right.
She hasn't gotten there yet, and
Hmm.
so they're like, Tim, jump. And he's like, I'm not gonna jump. Are you crazy? And he's like, I'm gonna count to 3, Tim, and then jump. 1, 2, 3, jump. And Lex is screaming, Timmy, come on, get off the
I can't
fence.
do it. I
Yeah,
can't do
yeah, I can't do it. And
it.
then Tim goes, I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, and right when he said 2, she turns the switch on and zaps him, and he flies off, and you think he's dead, like he got electrocuted. So Lex is all upset, and Grant's trying to bring him back, like
CPR.
regain consciousness and everything, and he's like, oh my god, he's not breathing, and then it switches back to Ellie, and and all the lights are coming on. She's like, oh my god, I think we're back in business, and a raptor, bam, through the back gate, just scared the crap out of me, that part too. And she's freaking out like, oh my god, and she's backing up, and then the arm comes down. She's like, oh, Mr. Arnold, and she turns around, and the arm is just an arm. That's all it is an arm. They made a toy. They made a toy about that because there was no Ray Arnold figure when the original toys came out. So they made Mattel has been making them for the last like 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit, maybe ever since Jurassic World came out. They've been making the toys, and they made a movie accurate Ray Arnold where the arm came off with the bloody stump. I don't have that one, but I do have a Ray Arnold figure where you can take his arms off. It's just not bloody. And the figure was him getting attacked by a raptor. I was like, what the? Where was this when I was a kid? Nedry had the one where the arms came out. Anyways, but that was a Comic-Con exclusive, so I wasn't getting it either way.
Yeah.
San Diego to be exact. So she's pretty like, oh my god, it's an arm. And she's trying to get away from this raptor, but she's also got this flashlight like hanging from her hip, and she's just running. And I think her leg got hurt too, so
Yeah.
because she's limping.
Yeah, because
And
it shut the door on her leg.
Yeah. And because she kicks the gate shut and it's pushing forward and like, prying in, like, hey, I'm gonna get you.
Yeah.
So she's running, and I think, doesn't she run back up the stairs, and you see the raptor jump down and start going after her, and she's limping,
Yeah.
trying to get away, and she gets out of there, and she's running, and she finally gets to this other fence and shuts the door, and she's breathing very heavily, like, I almost died. I'd
Yep.
probably be doing the same thing if I had a Velociraptor chasing me like
Yep.
that. They managed to bring Tim back, and
Mhm.
he starts coughing, and he goes,
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
And so Grant just laughs.
This bothers me. This scene bothers me.
Why?
If you've ever been through trauma training, especially like first aid training, CPR training, all that kind of stuff, you have to crack their sternum like
Really? Oh,
wide
yeah.
open.
Yeah.
If you're doing CPR, you have to crack their sternum. And
Yeah.
if you've had your sternum cracked open, you are not moving for like a week. Like it hurts to breathe, much less get up and run. And he's running without going ow, 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 or anything like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Movie magic.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I have heard that you have to crack the sternum
Yeah.
to get to resuscitate anybody. Yeah, that I've never been through anything like that, CPR training or anything, but I have heard of that before, so I am familiar with
I've
with
had
how
to
that
do
works. Ooh, I'm
I've
sorry.
had to do it. Yeah, when I was lifeguarding out of high school, I actually had to crack a girl's sternum and give her CPR. It was
Ugh.
definitely something you're not going to forget.
Yeah, no. So, this is when they go back to the visitor center, and Grant is he leaves the kids. He says, I'm gonna go find Ellie, find out where she is and everything. He leaves them, and they find this big smorgasbord, however you say that word, of food, and they're going to eat it and everything. They're gonna have hey, all this food we're gonna eat. I'm hungry. I think right after this is when Ellie's walking around and she sees Grant, and she's telling herself run. And she starts running towards him. They hug it out and everything. There's no raptor. Raptor's nowhere to be seen right now. And it goes back to the kids, and they're eating all the food. And Lex has Jello in her hand. I do this all the time. I have the Jello, and I shake it for no reason,
Yep.
Wife goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's Jurassic Park thing." She's looking, but she looks scared. And Tim's just eating, like, "Oh, I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat." And he stops and looks at her like, "What?" And she's just staring. And you see the silhouette of the raptor actually happens to get up on the raptor, the picture of the raptor in the thing. And they're like, "Oh, let's get out of here." They run into the kitchen. They shut the door, and basically they're saying they go back to Hammond and all them. And they're like, "Oh, well, the raptors escaped and this and that." And he's like, she goes, "Oh, unless you figure out how to open doors." You just had to say it, didn't you? You had to say it because the next scene was a raptor opening the door to the kitchen,
Mhm.
and Tim and
We're gonna just ignore all these scenes where we talked about how intelligent the raptors are. We're just gonna ignore that, you know. Okay.
exactly the beginning of the movie talking about how smart they were. This is when, yeah, Tim and Lex are already in there. They're at the end of the counter, whatever you call that, where they have all the dishes and stuff.
Yeah.
And she goes, "It's inside." And she goes, "Oh, no." She says, "What is it?" And Tim goes, "It's a velociraptor." She goes, "It's inside." And so
Mhm.
they're trying to get away, and these raptors, and this was kind of an intense scene too, especially because it's kids, and these are like dinosaurs, and they're like, they can't, they're like they're little kids, they can't really defend themselves against something like that. And so they're trying to get around.
They're also the same dinosaurs that we have just seen obliterate grown humans with actual weapons.
Exactly, he didn't even get a shot off on that thing.
No.
So the raptor jumps down, or sorry, they're moseying down the aisle, and they go around the corner. Right as they go around the corner, the raptor hits that stuff and knocks it all over, and is just looking like, "Y'all were here. I smell you. I smell you." And
Mhm.
they're trying to get away, and Lex goes away, and she's like, "Come on, Timmy." He's like, "Uh." And so I think this is when the spoon falls.
The ladle.
Yeah,
Yep.
the ladle, and the raptor looks up like, "Oh, I heard something," and then comes around and oh, no, 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 no. Starts licking the inside of it, and then lifts its head up like, where did that come from? What else is in here that I can get to?
You know
Uh,
the part that got me the most about this scene
what's that?
is before he gets to the pot where he starts licking.
Hmm.
As soon as they open the door, as they're walking, that giant raptor claws
Yes,
tapping.
yes.
That he's just tapping his toe on the ground. I'm like, for some reason, that not really scared me, but like really built the suspense.
Yeah, because that's how they
In a
communicate.
way, yeah,
Yeah.
tick 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 tick. And I'm like,
Well,
oh.
yeah, that, and they started. Oh, that's right, because they started doing that noise that they
The
make where
call,
they're communicating, and
yeah,
the kids are like covering their ears. So the raptor's still next to Tim, and Lex starts hitting the thing on the ground, the other one, and the raptor sees it. And this is one of my favorite tracks from John Williams, is this whole scene right here. And
mhm,
she hits it, and she's like trying to close this thing, and you can tell, maybe not at the time, but you can tell now when you watch it, that it's a reflection
yeah.
that shows her, and she's trying to close it, and she's freaking out, like closing it, and the raptor just charges at it, hits its head on it, and you realize, "Uh-oh, you're dumb." She gets out of there, and they're running away, and this is when the other raptor gets up and sees them and starts chasing after him. And I think this is when she's running
That
after it, and then it
they run around a corner, like they take a
yes,
tight corner, and the Velociraptor slips and like goes way off while they because it's like that slick tile.
yeah.
Yeah, he just slips and like slides way out.
So yeah, it slides into the freezer. And
Mhm.
so then Tim's trying to close the door, and the raptor's pushing forward, and then Lex runs over and hits the door too, and starts closing it and everything, right? Tim locks it, and he's just sitting there like, "Oh man, I was almost raptor chow," right?
Yep.
She grabs him, he gets scared, and they run off. And I think, doesn't it go back to somehow they end up back with Dr. Grant in this next scene.
Oh, the T-Rex comes in and eats the Velociraptors, and they run away while the T-Rex is distracted
Well,
by the
no, we
Velociraptors.
we skipped over a part because
Oh, did we? Okay.
they're back in the visitor center, and she's basically saying, "Oh, it's over there." And Grant has a shotgun, which was right before this. He got the shotgun and everything. That's when they're trying to get the power back on,
Mhm.
and she realizes, "Oh, this is like some kind of coding, whatever. I know this. I can figure this out." And meanwhile, he's talking about the door locks and everything, and he looks down at the door, looks back up, and the raptor's right there looking through that window at him, and he's just like, "Oh crap!" And it starts going going to open the door again, and he's grabbing it too, like,
Mhm.
don't open that door. So they're trying to get the computers back on, and they're going through this whole system and everything of getting the systems back on and everything. She finally gets it, and the door's locked and everything, and they call the phone, and Hammond looks up like, what? And he goes, Mr. Hammond, the phones are working again. Actually, both of them, Malcolm and Hammond, are just like, what?
Mhm.
Okay. He says the phones are working again. He says, tell them to call the helicopter. So that's when the raptor breaks through the glass. And I got a Lego set for that actually up there. Raptor breaks through the glass. He starts shooting at it and everything. You hear the gunshots on the other side of the phone, and Hammond's like, oh, screaming, Or he asks if the children are okay. He says, yeah, the children are fine. Call the
Yeah.
helicopter. And he starts screaming, and this is when they're trying to get out, and they crawl through the ventilation, like John McClane. They crawl through there. He kicks the ladder down, and this is when the raptor jumps. Like, you see it looking up, and
Yeah.
it
It
has
gets
like this
close.
weird like wording on its face. I don't even know where that was coming from. I guess it was the projector. Now that I think about it, I always thought it was a computer. I'm like, that makes no sense. I think it was a projector on its face that was
Oh, yeah, yeah, because it was, yeah, the projector that was shooting everything against the wall, so he steps in front of it.
mhm.
But yeah, I remember looking down at that camera shot, and I thought it was a really good like depth perception thing because like you could tell just how high that thing's jumping up, trying to get them in the ventilation shaft,
Yeah.
and like just how close it got to getting the foot.
Yeah, and when it hits it, when it jumps up, it hits Lex, and you can clearly tell that was a stunt double that fell into the that fell down, because when she looks up, it's like, oh, that's not the same. I think it was a stunt double. I think it was not her. They
Mhm.
pull her back up, and the raptor jumps up, barely misses her. I think this is when they find a way out of the vents, and they end up at the fossils that are hanging up, and they're
Yeah.
climbing down and everything. All the fossils snap, fall down. This is when like Tim falls, and then I guess the skeleton is falling towards him and lands on top of him, or doesn't really land on top. He's freaking out like, I'm gonna get stabbed. Falls on
Yeah.
him and shatters, and this is when the raptors show up too. They're all standing
Yes.
in like a huddle, like, uh-oh, we're dead meat. We're done.
Mhm.
Then once
Well,
one of
'cause
them
they're
got
all
the yeah,
hanging, like, they're all hanging on to one of the ribs, and the ribs are just kinda, like, whirling in the air while they're holding on to him, and the raptors are just like, "You're gonna fall eventually. We'll be here waiting for you."
yeah. And so they jump at them, and this is when the T-Rex grabs them
Mhm.
and starts, basically kills the first raptor, and then the other raptors charging at him too, jumps on the T-Rex. When you see the other raptor jump on the T-Rex, you see the claw marks, and those claw marks are there pretty much through the entire like series of the movies. You see those scars still on the T-Rex when you go into Jurassic World, still
Mhm.
there.
That
He
T-Rex is
grabs
beat to hell by the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, T-Rex grabs the second raptor, throws it into the bones. Meanwhile, they've already gone. They've gotten out. They're done. Throws it into the bones, does the whole spin around, and does the roar with the sign falling down. And some people have said, well, how did the T-Rex get in there? Well, if you notice, there's a giant hole on the side of the building. That's how it got through. It just kind of snuck on through, and, you know, did what it had to do to save and the humans are like, hey, we're not gonna stick around to find out what happens next.
You have some
So
questions right now.
yeah, so this is when they get back to the helipad. Jeep pulls up. It's all muddy, and this is the same Jeep that had the windshield getting knocked off from earlier in the movie that Muldoon was driving. And they're all getting on a helicopter. Grant's helping Malcolm get on. Meanwhile he's got his legs still messed up, and he Hammond's just looking like this whole place went to crap. And Grant has said earlier, he's like, I've decided not to endorse your park. He's like,
Yeah,
neither have I, or so have I.
yeah.
So they get in. He's looking and just reminiscing, like, man, everything just went to crap. It was supposed to be this great weekend, and it just went to complete crap on me. Gets Hammond in the helicopter. They're flying away, and everybody's like, just sitting there, like, man, we just went through hell. Ellie looks over at Grant. Kids are sleeping on him. He wakes up like, oh, hey, like the kid's sleeping on me. And this is when we get to like the other theme to the movie. That's basically it. The helicopter flies into the sunset, and that's the end of the movie, pretty much, and that is the end of the review portion of the movie. We kind of went a little way into detail on some stuff, which is fine. But yeah, that's the movie. So
Yeah.
final thoughts on the movie.
I mean, it's it's weird because I mean, the way I am about like shows and movies and gore and stuff, it's weird for me to say that I love this movie and it is such a classic simply because the scenes where you hear people being just mauled
Hmm.
and torn apart. You don't see anything. You see the leaves getting shaken all over the place, but you hear it. That's normally something I hate.
Yeah.
Like because my mind is great at imagining things. And when you give me just enough for my mind to picture the rest of it,
Yeah.
but there's so much about this movie that just makes it a pure classic that you just can't say that you're a movie fan and not have this on your radar.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you said it best. That's pretty much everything I was thinking too. Like, this is one of those movies that there's a reason it still holds up today. Still has as many fans as it did back then. I mean, yeah, who knew that this movie would still be popular 30 years later? I mean,
If this movie didn't if this movie didn't have the staying power that it does, then there wouldn't have been that big of a deal about pulling everybody back for the final Jurassic Park.
yeah, and like most Spielberg movies, it still holds up. It's up there with Jaws. You got Indiana Jones.
Hmm.
Um, man, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Man, what else? Saving Private Ryan was another good one he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is definitely a movie that really holds up.
Mhm.
So a couple fun facts is that the movie, they started working on the ride while the movie was still in production. So they got the rights to the ride first, I believe, before they even made a movie. And Michael Crichton, who wrote the book, really wanted to get this made into a movie. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, it was pretty interesting that the ride was supposed to come out first and then the movie was supposed to come out.
Yeah.
The movie actually came out ride came out open 3 years after the movie came out. But some of the casting was that William Hurt, Thunderbolt Ross,
Yeah.
was initially offered the role to play Dr. Grant.
No.
He turned it down without reading the script. Also, Kurt Russell and Richard Dreyfuss were considered for the role too, but they were deemed too expensive. Harrison Ford and Tim Robbins were offered the role. Um,
I can see Harrison Ford doing Grant.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that it wouldn't have worked because he had just gotten off of Indiana Jones, and they probably thought it would have been too much like that. So it's like,
Archaeologist, paleontologist.
yeah. So they ended up with Sam Neill. But here's an interesting one. Jim Carrey auditioned for the role of Malcolm
I
again.
can totally see that.
Yeah, I could see it too, but
But you don't take away Jeff Goldblum though.
yeah,
I
Jeff
don't think he
Goldblum
would have
is,
done as good, but I can totally see it.
yeah, it works for
Yeah.
him. See, Laura Dern was the first choice for Sattler, but was not the only actress. They had Gwyneth Paltrow and Helen Hunt audition for the role. Spielberg chose to pick Wayne Knight as Nedry after Basic Instinct, so it works for there. Also, Christina Ricci auditioned for the role of Lex. I don't think that would have worked out too well. Coming off of Addams Family, I don't think that would have worked out too well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kid that played Tim, Joseph Malezzo, had screen tested for Hook to play, I guess, the kid in that movie, the son. He was too young, so Spielberg said he would put him in a future film. And here's the one where people said it would have been too much like Indiana Jones. Sean Connery was considered for the role of John Hammond. Again, they were just coming off
Yeah.
of Raiders Last Crusade, so it wouldn't have worked out too well.
Yeah.
Um, Interestingly enough,
Mhm.
James Cameron wanted to make the movie. He wanted to adapt the movie as well. Like, a lot of people wanted to adapt the movie, and he was one of them. But
That would have been a very different movie.
yeah, it probably would have ended up being rated R, honestly, if he
Yeah.
did it, because if you've seen James Cameron movies, he's never, other than Avatar, he has never made a not rated R movie. So,
Wait,
uh,
was Titanic rated
no, it wasn't. You're right.
R? Okay, I was like, wait.
Yeah, so he wanted to make it, but it would have been weird. And Warner Brothers was up to make the movie with and Tim Burton, Columbia Pictures, Richard Donner, 20th Century Fox, Joe Dante bid for rights, and Universal ended up with the rights, which is in May of 1990 they ended up with the rights. Okay, interesting. So yeah,
Yeah,
ended up
I
with
found
Universal.
a little piece of trivia that Universal apparently paid Michael Crichton $2 million for the rights to his novel before it was even published.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, wow.
yeah, yeah. So I think also the second movie I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but the second movie, they wanted to make a second one, but Michael Crichton had not written a book for it. So he had to write the book before they even made a movie. So I actually have the book for Jurassic Park 1 right here. See?
Mhm. Oh.
Yeah. I also have Jaws. Jaws is based off a book too.
Jaws kid book?
Yeah. And Back to the Future and Ghostbusters. So yeah, he wrote the book, I think it came out in 95, and the second movie came out in 97. So honestly, the first movie definitely still holds up. The first two movies still hold up. I know the second one doesn't get a lot of people didn't like that one as much as the first one, but
Mhm.
I enjoyed the second one a lot. Maybe a little bit more than the first movie, but it definitely holds up. And I think it's one of those movies that should, like you said, should be on everybody's watch list. Definitely, something to watch, for years to come. But
Yep.
that's pretty much all I got on that one. On this is that's all I got to say about it.
Yeah, one little thing that I liked, a little factoid that I liked about this was that the movie and the book generated so much interest in just, studying dinosaurs and the study of paleontology that universities that had paleontology degrees saw a booming record of people enrolling in universities to do paleontology, which is another thing that I love about, speaking of Helen Hunt, one of my favorite movies of all time, Twister.
Hmm.
As soon as that came out, you saw staggering record enrollments in meteorology in universities
Yep.
because of that. And I think that's just another thing that I love about movies like that, when you do so good at conveying something that's all about education, and it's not like, oh, I want to become a member of a biker gang because this looks cool. It's, I want to go back to school and get a doctorate in this because this is awesome. I
Yeah.
want to do this. And like,
Yeah.
that's really cool for me.
Yeah. It's yeah, and it's this movie's gonna be around for years to come. Just like Jaws is still very popular, still celebrates all of its anniversaries. Star Wars still celebrates all of its anniversaries. This is just one of those movies that's up there with Star Wars. I think Indiana Jones just celebrated its 40th 2 years ago,
think,
2021, because the movie came out in 81. I think it
which,
was.
speaking of Indiana Jones, we're getting Indiana Jones in Disney World now, finally.
Wait, whoa, 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 what?
Oh yeah, they're turning the dinosaur ride into Indiana Jones.
So
They're
they're
basically they're doing the Disneyland flip.
so they're officially doing it. When did that come out?
That was the D23 Expo. That was like a week and a half ago, I believe.
Huh.
Like a week ago.
I
Yeah.
mean, well, who goes on a dinosaur ride, anyways?
I do.
Well, I haven't been on it.
Even though the Carnotaurus at the end always scares the crap out of me, no matter how many times I've been through it.
I haven't been on that dinosaur ride since we went with the band. No, we didn't go to Animal Kingdom with the band. I have not
No.
been on that ride since I went in 2099.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Every
1999 was when I was the only time I went to Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, every time we go to Animal Kingdom, we have to ride the dinosaur ride, even though the Carnotaurus scares the crap out of me every time.
I had no idea about that. That seems like something I would have known, but I didn't even know D23 was going on.
Yeah, because the dinosaur ride, the track is the exact same
Yeah.
track layout as the Indiana Jones. So they realized that all the visitor numbers and everything was falling for the dinosaur area.
Yeah.
So they decided to do a retheme, and they just decided, you know what, Indiana Jones over there is so successful,
Mm-hmm.
so they're gonna theme that whole entire area to like a South America vibe,
Okay.
and then have that be like an Indiana Jones experience.
Yeah, because they had been talking about doing that. I read somewhere, I watched this video on YouTube talking about the Indiana Jones ride, and they said the guy that did it said that there were rumors, and this was a few years back, that there were rumors that they were going to change that area to Indiana, the theme as Indiana Jones.
Yeah, people
Um,
have been talking about it for a long time, especially with how people like even me, because I've been such a Disney World person.
yeah,
Then I went to Disneyland in 2019, and I'm like, holy crap, this Indiana Jones ride kicks dinosaurs' ass.
yeah. I've been going on that ride since it opened in '94
So
or
good.
'95. I can't. It was '94 that it opened. But
Mhm.
yeah, it was one of those rides too. I mean, we're talking about Indiana Jones. It was definitely one of those rides where it was like we had to get like a pass or something, and the
Yeah.
lines were insane. Like they didn't have virtual queues or anything back then in
Fast
1994. So
pass.
the line was I don't even think they have fast pass at this point either. And I remember we went on it, and I think my sisters were too little to ride or something like that.
They didn't meet the requirement.
Somehow we got some sort of pass in order to skip over the line because somebody wasn't tall enough or something like that, and we did that like 4 times. So I got to go on that ride 4 times. It was great.
Nice.
Twice with my dad, twice with my mom, because we kept they didn't smarten up. We just kept doing that same thing, like, oh hey, we got this, and they're like, oh here's this pass, okay.
I mean,
So yeah. Speaking of Jurassic Park, they did retheme the ride at Universal Hollywood, and some people aren't happy about it because it's Jurassic World, not Jurassic Park.
yeah, I've heard about that.
It's still the
Not
same in Florida, but not Hollywood. They rethemed it. I don't know. I don't know. They rethemed Tower of Terror in California too. It's now Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah, don't get me started on that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
will cut people if they come for my tower in Florida. I'm not joking. I will
I
cut
don't
it.
think they can. I think there's a rule that they cannot
Mm,
put certain. It has to do with certain characters not being able to show up at certain parks because of their um because of that
that Dixie line thing.
yeah, because Universal has them. I don't know, their contract
Yeah.
is what it is. So yeah. Okay, well that is it for us guys. Thank you all for watching. Tessa, where can everybody find you?
So I'm really active on Twitch right now. My same tag, Boomer Sooner 6714. I'm on there playing a lot of COD, some Fortnite, playing other games that pop up, and just playing around, having a good time. So you can come check me out on there. We also do Ahsoka breakdowns, pretty much any Star Wars shows. My group will get on there and do some live reviews of those episodes. So come hang out and talk to me in the chat.
Yeah, I haven't seen that show yet, but we're gonna watch it.
Oh, it's so good.
So yeah, you guys definitely y'all know where you can find me every Tuesday, Thursday, here 7:30 p.m. I stream everything from old games to new games. I depending on when this goes live, I don't know what the last game I was playing or what I'm currently playing. It just depends. Yeah, I play everything from horror to adventure games. I even take requests, so you name it, I'll play it as long as I have it. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I think the next movie we're going to talk about is another Spielberg movie. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that.
You gotta stick around.
Yeah, a couple. We're going to talk about some video game movies as well, and yeah, that is it for today, guys. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, guys.
Later.